Morning, Judson. Well, I feel that way too. Y'all better appreciate me this morning because I almost died 6 times trying to get to you. I just got in. I felt bad this dude got here late and he didn't get credits, and I got here at the same time as he did, and I get credit. But literally, I didn't know it was going to, I was like, man, I'm going to give myself a half hour, maybe 45 minutes early. You know, they told me to be here at 9:30. I'll try to be here like 8:45. I didn't know it snowed. You know, I didn't know that it's January already. And so I woke up and I was like, oh, crap, babe. And so it took me like a half hour just to get the snow off my car. And so I am here. I'm alive. This is my pregnant wife, Cicely. Cicely, why don't you wave at them? And she's here with my baby, who's 5 weeks away from coming into this world. And so pray for your boy, because I'm about to be a lot more late to things after she comes. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joey Silva. I am a pastor in Chicago, in the actual city of Chicago. I've been a pastor there for going on 11 years now. So I've been doing this for a while. And I've never been to Judson. I actually had a couple students who have graduated from here. I got one current. Sebastian, you in the house? My boy Sebastian here, one of our former students. So if you like him, he's from our group. If you don't like him, I never met him, but that's my boy Sebastian. Today's Veterans Day, and I only know that because my office at the church was like, hey, you guys can have the day off today. And I was like, it's my day off anyways, haha. And so, but it's Veterans Day, and that's why I wore a little American flag type of stuff. And I'm thinking about this. By the way, if there's anyone here who has served our country, thank you so much for that. We greatly appreciate your service. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about one of the greatest warrior generations that we see in the Bible. If you have your Bible, why don't you open up to Joshua chapter 5. In Joshua chapter 5, there's this teaching I do here that we call the Joshua 5 generation, and it's a 3-part teaching, so if I ever get invited back, maybe you'll hear one of the other parts. But particularly, I wanted to focus in on this one aspect of it. Let me explain why we call this the Joshua 5 generation. This is the generation that was born in the desert from the Exodus generation. And so in the Bible, if you've ever seen any of those movies where they tell them, hey, let my people go, you know, Moses comes in, takes the people out of Egypt, the Red Sea parts, they go through, they're the Exodus generation. They end up wandering the desert out of, issues that they had of disobedience, and so they're wandering the desert. And during that time of wandering, there was another generation born, and this is the Joshua generation. Now, as a result of the Exodus generation's sin, they're not allowed to go into the promised land. God says you're going to wander the desert until basically all of you die off, and that next generation, the Joshua generation, will be the one to take the promised land. And so we find in Joshua chapter 5, they reach the front door, basically, of the promised land. And right at this moment, God stops them to do some preparations. But when you flash forward and you see what the Joshua 5 generation accomplishes, it's incredible. They really are one of the greatest warrior generations that we ever see. See, up until this point, God basically does everything for the Israelites, right? God parts the Red Sea. God takes care of their enemies. God does everything. But in the Joshua 5 generation, we see them for the first time having to actually fight to do things. And they fight and fight well. They take over 31 different nations that are surrounded within the promised land. And battle after battle, they win, 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 win. They are wildly successful as a generation. And the reason I wanted to talk about that with you is because I really do feel your generation is uniquely equipped, uniquely gifted to do unbelievable things and to be wildly successful. There's never been a generation as creative, as intelligent, as wildly successful within its ability to connect and learn as your generation. Now, you get a bad rap. You know, you get you're lazy, you're this, you're that. Call me lazy. I say I just work better, not harder. You know, I just understand how to do things in a way that maybe you had to do it a little bit more physically tasking. But your generation has some abilities that are unique to you, that I think are part of what's going to make you successful. And in this room, I'm hoping we have a lot of successful people. Not all of you might do bivocational ministry or vocational ministry. Some of you, like one of my students that graduated here, he's a math teacher. I don't know why he went to school to be a math teacher. I'm like, dude, you're super smart. You're good looking. You got all this together. Why do you want to be a math teacher? He's like, I like math. I was like, All right, I guess that's a basic answer. Good for you, buddy. And he's the only math, oh, no, I'm not going to get into that. He's a math teacher. And so some of you might be math teachers, some of you might be business majors, you might be whatever. But I believe if you're here, part of that reason is God brought you here to make a leader out of you. I think spiritual leaders, no matter the vocation, are called to lead. And real quick, before I get into this part, I want to make sure I make something clear. You could be spiritual and not be a leader. There are plenty of people who are super spiritual, who do all the right things, who've lived super holy lives, but they're not leading anybody. I call them overweight Christians. They take in a lot, but they don't do a lot with it. So you know the Bible, you just don't do anything about it. You understand what to do in church, but it only stays in church, right? You're spiritual, but you're not a leader. And on the other end, there are leaders who aren't spiritual. The world is filled with unbelievable leaders who have no relationship with God. The difference for a spiritual leader is the person who's had the ability to combine the two. And in the Joshua 5 generation, we see God beginning to form them into spiritual leaders. And so one of the attributes that I think is vital for any spiritual leader is to be able to have a hunger for what God is doing. If you're taking notes, I kind of titled this aspect, New Hunger. And in Joshua chapter 5, let me read verse 10 through 12. It says, on the evening of the 14th day of the month, while camped at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, the Israelites celebrated the Passover. The day after the Passover, that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread and roasted grain. The manna stopped that day after they ate this food from the land. There was no longer any manna for the Israelites, but that year they ate the produce of Canaan. Manna was God's provision to Israel while they were in the desert. Listen, Exodus chapter 16, verse 4 through 5. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. I don't know about you, that's my life verse. If I can have bread rain down from heaven, I know bread makes you fat, but if I can have bread on a regular basis, I would be in heaven already. The Israelites didn't have to do anything, right? The sea was parted for them. Fire was made for them. Bread rained down for them on a regular basis. But what you have to understand is 6 days a week, they would go out morning and evening and collect that bread. The day before Passover, they would collect twice as much. This was miraculous. It was needed because they were nomadic. Because they didn't stay in one place, they couldn't do agriculture. They couldn't do a lot of the basic things that we would do if we were in one place. They were nomadic, and because of that, God had to provide bread on a regular daily basis. The Joshua 5 generation, being born in the desert, had never known anything but God's provision outside of manna until this moment, until the moment where it stops. Manna was basically all they'd ever known. They had a steady diet of manna. I don't know about you, I'm Puerto Rican and Mexican. If you just gave me rice and meat for the rest of my life, I'm fine. I can eat rice and meat forever. And though I don't know if I could just eat manna every day for my entire life, but this was their diet. This is all they knew. Now imagine if all of a sudden, every restaurant, every grocery store, every avenue of food that you are used to gets stopped. If all of a sudden all those food supplies cut off, what would you do? I mean, most of us in this room, unless you're like super farmer, most of us in this room, we don't know how to cultivate the land on our own. We can't raise livestock. This suddenly, their entire lives, they're used to bread being rained down, and suddenly the manna stopped. Someone forgot to pay the manna bill. Someone forgot to tell God, we need this to live. One day to the next, everything stops. The manna is gone. And from now on, God would provide with the milk and honey from the promised land. So here's the thing. This wandering generation can no longer wander. The option for wandering when it comes to the Joshua 5 generation is over. They have no choice but to fight into the promised land. Perhaps it was God's safeguard. Maybe this was God's way of stopping them from going back and doing what their parents had done. Maybe this is true. Maybe this was God's way of removing the option of taking away the safety net of saying, no, you got to do this. There is no other option for you. The only way to eat was forward. Back in the day, the old missionaries, they would pack all their belongings in a coffin and then go to the area that God had called them to be a missionary to. The reason they packed it in the coffin is because they were never planning to go back home. They took everything, including the box they'd be buried in, because that was it. There was no plan B. There was no going back. They had no option but to move forward. And in the Joshua 5 generation, they had to move forward for one vital reason. They were hungry. In the end, it was hunger that moved them from wanderers to warriors. And it always will be. Hunger moves you from wanderer to warrior. Think about it. When you get hangry, your emotions go out the window. You don't care anymore. You'll yell at somebody. You'll be rude to people. You'll get all, and we've had it. My wife, and she's pregnant now. So that's a whole different level of hangry. I knew her hanger before, but now that two people, and I have a daughter, so it's two women that are hangry in one body, she scares me. You know, she's little, but she's fierce. She could throw things. And so when she's hangry, I'll just let her, like, babe, you hungry? She's like, yeah. I'm like, I'll get you something. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to throw stuff at me. We can work on this. How hungry are you? Not now, literally. Some of you are like, yo, I'm so hungry. How hungry are you? Because here's the deal. Wanderers, what the Joshua 5 generation was, they're moved by passion, while warriors are steadied by zeal. Let me talk to you about zeal. Zeal is a word that we don't use as commonly anymore. Most people don't understand zeal because they confuse it with passion, but it's not the same thing, okay? Passion in the Bible, or at least in the NIV, is almost always associated as a bad thing. I'm not saying it's bad, but what I am saying is that zeal is better. I like zeal more than passion because zeal comes from a deeper place and leads to better results. Because anyone can be passionate, but only warriors live by zeal. See, passion gives you a heart for God and the things for God. Zeal gives you a strength for God and the things for God. Passion is good, but it lacks resolve. Zeal is passion mixed with unwavering determination. See, your generation has passion. You get really passionate about a lot of things, but that means you only get heated. You get triggered, but not enough to actually do stuff. So you might become a real hardcore social media warrior. You talk a big game. You know, and I love this generation. I work with it. But it makes me laugh. You have this big thing on climate change sometimes, and I don't care about your politics on that. I'm not getting into that. But you have a big thing. I'll see some of my people like, we should do that. I'm like, but you drive everywhere. You drive to the corner store, bro. Like, so how are you going to say with one hand this and the other hand this? Because they have passion, but they don't have zeal. Passion is enough to get excited about. Zeal is enough to do something about it. Our generation gets real passionate about injustice, but doesn't have enough zeal to do something about it. We get really passionate about things that we see that we don't like, but we don't have enough zeal to make a change about it. See, passion, it lacks mettle, it lacks strength, it lacks commitment. Passion is excitement, zeal is commitment. Passion rides the wave of emotion. Zeal is set in the will of a person. Passion is a feeling you get for God. Zeal is a decision you make for God. Passion is about your heart for God. Zeal is about your strength for God. Passion is what a new believer has. Zeal is what a lifelong follower of Jesus has. Passion raises its hand in a worship service. Zeal resists temptation when nobody's looking. Passion trusts God in the light. Zeal trusts God in the dark. Passion chases spiritual goosebumps. Zeal chases spiritual grit. Passion can start things for God. Zeal can finish things for God. Passion gets excited for a vision. Zeal has the strength to fulfill the vision. Passion wants to change the world. Man, your generation wants to change the world. And I love that about you. I love that you have the excitement. You see everything that's going wrong and you say, man, I want to change that. But zeal is actually capable of doing it. Zeal can work tireless hours for countless years in less than ideal situations with limited affirmation to actually change the world. There's a big difference between passion and zeal, because passion is rooted in emotion, but it's untrustworthy. Emotions wander. Passion wanders. Leaders who lead based on passion but lack zeal find themselves wandering. They lack grit, follow through, discipline. Again, passion is good. There's nothing wrong with being excited. It's just not enough to sustain the realities of leadership. You know, I usually do this on a whiteboard, but I don't have one. Can I have the worship singers, the three who were singing? Can you guys come up? Are you here? The three singers, the guy, the girl, and the two girls. Why don't you guys come up? Where's the dude? Come here. I'm going to give you a real quick illustration of what I'm talking about, in particular with your generation, okay? Oh, you're sweet. You're going to be my first one. Okay, so you stand right here. You stand in the middle. And then you on the third end. You're in the middle, bro. Okay, yeah, right over here. Here's what we're discovering, okay? She's going to represent point A. Point A is all new things. Point A is the first time you get to a new school. It's the first job. It's the first new relationship. It's the excitement of newness, right? This represents, if I was going to say a book in the Bible, this is Proverbs. Proverbs is, man, everything's great. And if you just do good, you get good. And it's a real positive, glass half full. We love A. A is wonderful, right? Give it up for A real quick. A is wonderful. B, this is B. You're B, right, B? B is the first fight you have in a relationship. B is the first time you get in trouble at work. B is when you have this major that you're really excited about and then you fail the first class and you're like, wow, this is hard. B is what I would call reality, right? B is the complications of life. If I was to give B a book in the Bible, I would say that B can be represented by Ecclesiastes, right? Everything sucks. There's no point. Everything's meaningless. Ugh. Give me your good ugh face. Ugh. B is how half of y'all look when I started talking. Like, I'm just doing it for the credits, man. I just want to get out of here already. B is everyone who has their hoodies up and their hats down. Like, totally not zoned into what's going on. Ugh. C, she's scared now. She's like, oh, what am I going to be? C understands that life's not all A and life's not all B. C is what I would call contentment. C understands that life is a mixture. C is maturity. C is, yeah, I get it. It's not, B is like, I can't believe she broke up with me. C is like, yeah, there's other people. Don't worry about it. A is like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like, yeah, well, you won't be excited next week. Don't worry about it. Like, C is just well-rounded and gets it. If I were to give C a book in the Bible, I would say that C is Job, right? Job went through it all. Job had the highs, the lows, the highs again. Job understood, you know what? It's not about me. It's about God, and I trust God through the highs and through the lows. C is good with that, right? Now, here's the issue. The goal is to get from A through B to C. That's the goal. What we're finding with your generation is you love A, but the moment you experience B, you go look for another A. Right now, your generation is going through 9 different career paths before they reach the age of 30. 9 different paths because you're like, oh, this is great. Oh, maybe it's not as good as I thought it was. I got to find another one. Freshman, you're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to major in this. Wow, that class was hard. New major. Right? Like, everyone is constantly looking for a new A, but if you can't get through the lives of B, if you can't get through these complicated, navigated situations, you'll never reach C, and you'll be in a constant search, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. New relationships every week, new churches every week. This is why we got church hoppers galore, because the moment the church tries to hold you accountable, you look for a new church. The problem is you have options. And so you're constantly going in this circle. You never reach maturity because you're constantly looking to start over again. Thank you, guys. That's good. Does that make sense? Listen, zeal is rooted in the will. It's not about your emotions. You can't allow your emotions to dictate the path of your life. You can't sit there and go, I feel like I want to do this. Because tomorrow you might not feel like that. Listen, I can't be married to my wife. Those of you who are dating or looking to get married at some point, let me tell you just right off the bat, my marriage is not built on love. It's built on a commitment. I don't always love her. She don't always love me, right? When she's hangry, she don't love me. During that middle of that childbirth, when she's pushing and I'm like, do it, baby, she's like, shut up. She don't love me, okay? At least feeling-wise. But love becomes more than feeling. It's a commitment. We are committed to each other, even when we don't like each other, right? You have to learn the skills of having commitment, of experiencing zeal. Zeal is rooted in the will. It's not a feeling you get. It's a decision you make. It is passion steeled with unwavering determination, perseverance. Zeal stays committed when passion begins to wander again. Leaders with zeal are can do whatever it takes, count on me kind of leaders. Romans 12:11 tells us to never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. And so here's my question for you this morning, Judson. Where are you lacking in zeal? Where are you going back into wandering? Where have you allowed passion to take over where zeal should have settled in? There are areas I believe that the Bible is commanding us to never be lacking in zeal with. Two particular parts that I think, and once I get through this, you'll be able to go on the rest of your day. But there's two areas that I think we should never be lacking in zeal. And let me just be clear. Right now I'm talking to the believer. I'm not naive to think a Christian college is full of Christians. Just like me standing in a garage doesn't make me a car. Okay? But for a moment, believers, hear me out. For the believers in this room, for those who are genuinely, passionately pursuing a relationship with Jesus Christ, listen to my heart. Because this is what can change the dynamic and even the atmosphere in the school, in your future, in your family, in your neighborhoods. When you understand that there are two specific areas that you as a believer can never be lacking in zeal with. Number one is this. You should never be lacking in zeal for the presence of God. For the presence of God. Are you fighting, praying, seeking, striving to live in the constant awareness of God's presence? Or are you drifting from zeal of God's presence? See, I've done youth ministry for so many years. I know the ebbs and flows. I know when a student gets stirred up at a camp or a retreat or a conference and the passion level rises, but the zeal doesn't. So a few days later, when that passion begins to dwindle and zeal isn't there to steady it, they go back to wandering the same way they were right before that event. Where are you losing your zeal for the presence of God and drifting back into just simply having passion for it? Because here's the truth. You are as close to God as you choose to be. Maybe not as close as you want to be, but you are as close as you choose to be. Jesus Christ, when he died on the cross, cleared any obstacles between you and God. The only obstacle left is a lack of desire, the absence of zeal, what is called in the Bible being lukewarm. Oftentimes when you say, I don't feel God anymore, it's you that moved away, not him. God is constant. God is steady. You are the one who wanders and drifts. Where are you beginning to drift away from your passion for God? Where are you losing that excitement that you had when you got in his presence? That time alone where you just simply sat and enjoyed the fact that you can be in the presence of God. Some of us get caught up in service to God, but that's not the same thing. See, there are times where I'll hang out with my wife and I'll be with her all day. We'll be at church, we'll be running errands, we'll hang out with some friends, we'll be doing things all day, and then we'll get home and she'll look at me and she goes, I miss you. And I go, I've been with you all day. What do you mean you miss me? I miss just being with you. So when we get home, she doesn't want me to turn the TV on. She just wants me to sit there. And she doesn't care what we talk about. She just wants to be with me. And I don't think God's that different. You're like, God's looking at you saying, hey, I miss you. What do you mean, God? I go to a Christian college. I was in chapel. I paid attention. I took my hoodie off. I lifted my hands. Yeah, but I miss just being with you. I miss just you and I talking to each other. I miss just you and I being with each other. You haven't gotten alone with me in a while because you're starting to lack that zeal for my presence. You don't desire to be with me the way you used to desire it. When you lose zeal, you start to drift off. I was talking to a friend of mine who had just got back from Israel, and he said something interesting to me. Typically, there's this wall, it's the Western Wall, that was always called the Weeping Wall. And the reason they called it, or the Wailing Wall, the reason they called it the Wailing Wall is because people would line up in front of it with prayers. They would write down these little prayers on a piece of paper, and they would literally cry out to the Lord. They would weep tears as they presented those prayers to the Lord, and then they would slide them in to the little cracks in the wall. But when he was on the tour, they kept referring to the wall as the Western Wall and not the Wailing Wall. And so my friend asked him, he goes, excuse me, I've always heard it being referred to as the Wailing Wall. Why are you calling it the Western Wall? And the guy simply turned around and said, nobody's crying anymore. See, this is another aspect that I think we need to get back to, because we think that tears are equated to emotions, but that's not always the case. You can never be lacking in zeal for the presence of God, but you have to be careful to never be lacking in zeal for the lost. John chapter 4, the story of the Samaritan woman. The disciples are hungry, so they go to get lunch. Jesus stays back to change a life. When they come back and they ask him if he had eaten, listen to what he says. He says, I have food you know nothing about. That's his zeal for the lost. It's like food. When you lose zeal for the lost, when it comes to ministry, you go from being a spiritual, everything on the line, mission to rule the world, to just turning the big religious machine. And then you wonder why you're frustrated with the church. Maybe it's because you forgot you are the church. We go to just cranking out meetings, doing reports, looking for jobs, not looking for ministry. Those of you who are looking to get into vocational ministry, or those of you who understand that as a believer, you're called to serve regardless, can I give you one of the best strategic advices of pastoral ministry that you will ever receive? I want to give you the best strategy. Those of you who are serious, listen, I want to commit my life to serving God. You have all these books, you have all these. I'm going to give you the best strategy that you could ever think of. Go into your prayer room and don't come out without tears. Go into your prayer closet and don't come out until you have tears for the lost people around your church, around your community, around your school. We've tried everything else. Maybe we need to go back to tears. Not preaching another sermon or listening to another podcast or hearing another song, going to another conference, having another meeting, planning calendar events. Tears. Just get in there and cry because people are dying and going to hell. Tears because there's lost people that are still out there. You see, tears change how you view the church. Tears change how you prepare for the service that God has called you to. Tears change how you press in when the Lord is moving. Tears change how you process things after the Lord speaks to you. If you want to be able to take new territory, you have to take new hunger in you. So here's my question. When was the last time you had tears because of the things that God is doing? See, we have tears for a lot of things, for a lot of injustices in the world, and rightfully so. Some of the stuff that's going on just in my community in Chicago bring tears to my eyes. It hurts. But we can do all the social change we want to do. We can cure hunger. We can solve homelessness. We can help racism to be eradicated. We can do all those things, and those people will still die and go to hell without Jesus. You can do everything you want to do to cure the issues that we're seeing in the world, but we forget that there's still an afterworld. And I say this a lot to my parents. Stop being so consumed with getting your kid into Harvard and let's try to get him into heaven. When was the last time you had tears because people around you were not going to go where you think you're going? So I'm going to ask you to stand as we get ready to close. I always like that last night because everybody's back's all jacked up. You can stretch it out for half a second. Judson, I may never see you again. I may never come back here, depending. I got here late. They may not invite me back again. That's cool with me. I came what I feel God told me to say. But here's the deal. I love football. My man with the 54 jersey. I like that. We got to upgrade you, though, bro. I love football, right? I love sports. I'm all about sports. But here's something interesting. Could you imagine getting in a huddle, football huddle, calling the play, right? You got everything together. You all huddle up. Everything's excited. We're going to run, an outpost to the corner, score a touchdown, win the game. We're going to run this play. And then when we close the huddle, everybody runs back to the bench. It just seems dumb, doesn't it? Like we planned, we practiced, we set this up, but we didn't execute. And then you lose the game. And they're interviewing the coach. What happened? Why did you guys go back to the bench? We had a great play, but we didn't execute it. Here's the deal. I just gave you the play. To get back to hunger, to move away from passion, to be steadied by zeal, to go after the presence of God, and remember the lost. It's totally up to you to run it, because the coach doesn't play the game. He just calls the play. And so I want to pray for you real quick. I want to pray that God would give you the courage to put into practice the things that he has called you to do. Why don't you close your eyes and bow your head for just a moment? Thanks, guys. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for everyone in this room, God. For those who were listening and those who were pretending not to. Because regardless of who it is, God, you spoke. And Lord, I pray that everyone in here whose heart heard your voice, that they wouldn't just say, yeah, that was good, but that they would put it into practice. That they wouldn't allow their emotions to be stirred, but not have enough zeal to follow through. So God, I pray, let this generation, God, this wildly unique, potentially successful, incredibly gifted generation that you have purposed and planned for such a time as this, let them be filled with your Spirit to be able to do and accomplish the things you have called them to do. Lord, that we wouldn't just go back to our regular day and just go back to our regular routine and go back to doing the mundane things and forget the greater picture. That at the end of all this, when we stand before you in heaven, you're not going to care what sport we played. You're not going to care what grades we got. You're not going to care what career we chose. We'll hear one of two things. We'll either hear, well done, good and faithful servant, or away from me, for we never knew you. Father, I pray to God that everyone in this room will be able to know you and you know them. We pray this all in Jesus' mighty name. And everyone said, amen. Amen. You are dismissed. Thank you for having me. God bless you.